What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about Pew 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 Pew, The Gunslinger by Stephen King. Which, guys, this has been a long time coming. I've been kind of putting off reading Stephen King for too long. This is kind of maybe a cop-out that I went into this very short book of his. But either way, I really enjoyed this, and this caught me off guard. So, let's get into it. The story is about the last known gunslinger and essentially his quest to find the man in black and seek out the Dark Tower. Now I say quest, but this is almost like the gunslinger's it's like his charge or like his sole purpose almost. Throughout reading the book, you start to understand that nothing is going to get in the way of our gunslinger and his path towards the Dark Tower. When the story starts, we're in the desert with the gunslinger. Now he's trying to find this man in black. He's been basically on his tail for far too long. So then we're traveling through the desert. We don't really know much about the world or its inhabitants, really. We're kind of kept in the dark, and we are enlightened as we go. The story will have several flashbacks, which gives us a lot of insight towards the gunslinger. But then the majority of the story is this kind of, it is like almost like a quest, because it is very much like a starts from point A, ends at a point B. The overall tone of the book is dark. I mean, I guess shouldn't be too surprising. It's Stephen King. But this is, it's dark for fantasy. In fact, I would probably classify this book in the dark fantasy category. But even keeping with this tone, I wouldn't be surprised if people said that this book of the series is somewhat of a grimdark book. Our main character certainly is an anti-hero, and there are certainly some events that unfold in just kind of a dastardly way, and it's usually hard to get me to call a book grimdark. I'm that guy. It's like pulling teeth for me to really be like, okay, it's grimdark. And I'm not saying this one is, but it doesn't take much for me to say that there are definitely some grimdark elements in the story, and that's one thing I think I just liked right out the gate. Now I want to talk about just the writing, maybe the writing style, Stephen King's prose in this book. See, this is the only one I've read, and I've heard from a lot of people that read, or people that are prolific King readers. A lot of them say that this is not a good example of his work. I still loved it, and I thought there was things in here that he did very, very well. I think he really pulled me into this world. The fact that it was mysterious, and I could see where it could trip some people up, but it reminded me a lot of another world where just society has maybe gotten too big for its britches, and we are no longer technologically advanced. In fact, we hit a huge decline and things go very primitive. And that's kind of what this world feels like. And it was really easy for me to envision the desert. The town of Tull was really easy for me to envision. And, King uses this description of greasy light. And I loved that. For some reason, I just saw that, everything I was picturing had this, I was seeing it through the greasy light lens. So it was just really cool for a guy that likes grimdark and just darker stuff. This was really hitting a lot of the good spots, you know what I mean, for me. Another thing, just some of the beautiful writing that he has, some of it just, the way it flows can come off really badass. It can kind of hit you in the stomach. There just a lot of cool descriptions. One of my favorite that it's just, you guys know, when you read something and it's described so well, just personally for you, that it just hits and you stop reading for a second. You're like, oh. There's a moment in this book where King describes the bullets being fired as white lances in the dark. And this, num, 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 num. So good to me. Another thing that really grabbed me about this book was just the gunslinger lore. When we start, the main character is the last gunslinger, but we don't really know his name, but we will come to know him as Roland. And we get we get these flashbacks and bits of insight to just kind of what shaped Roland into the guy he is and being the last gunslinger. It also gives us insight into the previous gunslingers that were around in Roland's youth. This is just a lot of fun. I was really pulled in. I mean, there was in one of these flashbacks, there's a character, it's one of Roland's friends who was a gunslinger as well. He calls him Bert. I think his name was Cuthbert. And he's kind of a smartass. He seemed like the class clown of the gunslingers. But in this moment, there's a part where he's like kind of vulnerable and beat down, and he's doing this like mantra of like, I will remember the face of my father, and all that. Like that gunslinger talk was really, really awesome and intriguing to me. Like when they start saying these phrases, it was just kind of gave me goosebumps almost. I just really got into that whole aspect of this book. Another thing I really appreciated in this book was just some of Stephen King's strange and odd choices of things to throw in there. There's a psychedelic part in this book where where Roland consumes like mescaline or peyote or whatever, and it's like part of like what he needs to do to go on this mission and talk to this person. That whole part was just cool and interesting, and I thought also kind of unique as far as in fantasy. Now, this is not actually something that strange to our own history when you think of like Native Americans and going on like these, spirit journeys and whatnot. So I really liked this being put into the story, as well as just, the ending is very different. I honestly, I really wish I would have got to this book when I was younger. Like I would have loved this book as a teenager, except for I don't know how I would have, how I would have accepted the ending or, but as an adult and where I'm at now as a reader, I absolutely just loved the choices he made towards the end of this book. Now, this is just book one in a big old series, and it's also connected to a lot of other stuff that Stephen King has done. It's well beyond what I understand, but it's just so cool. So all in all, it's pretty easy to see I love this book. I do feel like I opened Pandora's box, and I'm a little excited, a little overwhelmed all at the same time. I finished this book days ago, and I still can't stop thinking about it. So the one thing I noticed, though, is a lot of people that love the Dark Tower series, a lot of them have negative opinions on book one, and a lot of the reasons they didn't like it are the reasons I did. So it does worry me about the future of the series, but I will not let fear get the best of me. I'm going to push forward, and hopefully I get into book 2 next month. Honestly, man, I have to like really applaud or just shout out some of my buddies and fellow booktubers, because I don't know if I ever would have got around to reading this if it wasn't for like people whose opinion I respect. I grew up with a guy named Doug Johnson. He loved King, and I love Doug, so I respect his opinion, and I was excited to get into this book. David from David's Book Reviews, since I started the channel, I've known David, and I'm pretty sure The Gunslinger was his first Stephen King book, and he's a diehard Stephen King fan, so I got to give a big thumbs up to David, and then also to like Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, who just put out a Gunslinger video not too long ago, as well as a Why You Should Read the Dark. Man, those videos really sealed the deal for me. I'll put a link, to those in the description. Just thanks for promoting this stuff, guys, because honestly, it's what finally got me to stop pussyfooting around and get to it. And I am so glad that I did. Now, as far as my 2 cents for the slow and the struggling, I would just kind of encourage you guys to pick this book up if you're into something like dark fantasy. I think that this is one of the best dark fantasy books I've read, and it's definitely got something interesting and different attached to it. I will say, though, for the struggling reader, there are some things that could snag you up because you're kept in the dark here in this story, but I feel King does a good job of enlightening you along the way. But there are some flashbacks, some back and forth, in the narrative. This is actually probably I think this might be the first book that I've read that has a flashback within a flashback. So there are things there that can trip you up as far as, being a straightforward narrative. I don't think it's that tricky though. Even if with the popping back and forth, I think it's pretty nice and tight, and I don't think you're going to get too lost. But just in case, I'll throw that out there. Slow readers, no excuse, especially if you're into dark fantasy. I won't be surprised if this becomes a series that I start screaming about a whole lot. So, be warned. Now, as always, guys, I'd like to just say thanks for spending some time down here at the channel. And to Stephen King. Holy, it's not even. Man, you got my attention. You know what I mean? I'm late to the party, but you got my attention. Whew. All right. If you're new, hey guys, please like and subscribe. Trying to grow the channel. Could use your help. As always, peace.